Okay. Now, people say, oh, they have government stings all the time, or they'll use confidential informants all the time. And both of those things are true. I don't, I can't think of another time where a confidential informant was used in a manner like this.
Well,
Typically, if you're running around with a group of, you're a crook, okay, and you have a bunch of friends that are crooks, and they catch you, all right, and then they send you back to your friends that
that's
you've
right.
been crooked with, and get some of them.
That's right.
They didn't do that with him.
Well, no. Let me go to Dweck's testimony again in the trial of Daniel Van Pelt, the assemblyman in Ocean County. He gets on the stand, and again, you know, you've described him well. It's almost as if he catches the prosecution off guard, and he turns out saying that, in saying, well, why does he know about public corruption? He's saying, well, I bribed a lot of people in my time. And he's saying, well, who have you bribed? He says, I bribed. This is Dweck. I bribed plenty of politicians in Monmouth County who were still in office. Okay? Now, Monmouth County has predominantly Republican candidates serving them. Okay? And then it prompted me to go look at Dweck's elect statements, and he has predominantly given to Republican campaigns in Monmouth County. Nothing ever became of that statement he made. No investigation. We've raised that issue in our court documents, which we hope to have evaluated. But it just goes to show you that Dweck, if he had information about what he said on the stand, and he gave it to the FBI when he made his deal that these guys took money, they're corrupt, it was overlooked. And you got to realize, some of those people, if they're still in office at the time he said, would have run on the line with Chris Christie in the governor's race of 2009.
Right, and he can't take out the people that hurt his chances to become governor.
Well, that might have been a consideration.
Somebody told me a few months back that we had always been lucky up before Christie. We were lucky in this area with the U.S. attorneys, because the people that filled the job of U.S. attorneys, their ambition was to go from there and be judges. This is the first one that wanted to go from there to be a governor.
Yeah.
And that's the motivation.
And I think that there was, it might have been the motivation going in, which is even far worse. And you could make a point of that if you looked at his whole career and what he was doing with these settlement agreements.
I don't think he corrupted that office. I think he looked at what the corruption was available there and says, this is my means to the end. I'm going to be...
Yeah.
If those reforms that you mentioned, if they were in place, he would have never been the U.S. attorney.
No, that's correct. The other thing, Mike, is that he brought a lot of people in that office with him who, drank the Kool-Aid.
Right.
But let me just go real quick to one other point you made about government stings and confidential informants. And it's a misstatement when you say that they always use someone, from crime. And I'll point to, in sensitive investigation matters, okay, where it's going to involve a public official, most of the times, and people remember Abscam, they use FBI undercover. So the sting isn't corrupted, or that the sting follows the parameters of the law, so someone's due process, whether they're guilty or innocent, is not violated.
And that's part of the thing. The idea of the sting is you give somebody the opportunity to break the law.
Right.
All right? You don't talk them into it. Now,
that's entrapment.
There was someone, one of the Jersey City candidates or politicians or whatever, whose name I don't remember, but apparently he took an envelope of cash from Dweck and then took it home and stuck it in a shoebox.
Yeah.
And never touched it. I mean, like, he knew that he did wrong, but I don't think he really knew he did wrong until he got away from Dweck. I think this Dweck has a way, the way he talks a teller into something is,
Well, when we get into the stuff about the crimes of Solomon Dweck in the case, you'll see, it was his personality. He was telling people, take this donation and don't put my name on it. Now, that's a crime. That's a crime in itself. It's a crime he was never prosecuted for by the FBI. And it's a crime he never got permission to commit by the FBI, corrupting an election. He might have had permission to give somebody a bribe.
Well, when you say
straight
permission,
up.
wait a second. There was you made a point, or your lawyer did in one of the briefs, there's a procedure.
That's right.
Okay, a written procedure. Okay, so they're doing one thing in the written procedure.
And he's doing something totally different.
No, but when they're talking to him, they're doing something totally different.
Well, we
they're
have
also
to.
telling them, dirty him up if you can.
Right. It's one of two things. We don't, and without a lot of the evidence, we don't know. Did the government tell Dweck to do this? If they did, then you have agents and the U.S. Attorney's Office who have a problem. If it was Dweck, why wasn't he arrested? Because that's part of his agreement. He can't break the law only on the parameters that they advised him he could. And those parameters were he could attempt to bribe people
He
who were
eventually,
public officials, but it had to be a bribe. He was using the qualification of a campaign donation. And it was an active election cycle, and that's where they sort of broke the laws that prohibit them from getting involved in affecting the election of the outcome of elections.
and you know something, there's more to this. As important as due process is, there's more to this than just due process. Who was the guy that was elected mayor of Hoboken?
Camerano, Peter
Okay.
Camerano.
In a very close runoff.
That's right. Well,
Okay.
here's the point. The point is, if you read the criminal complaint, about $40,000 went into that election. It was a very close election. Now that money, which was directed by Solomon Dweck, I'll get you, get straw donors, and was telling them, definitely affected the outcome of that election. Close to $200,000 went into various Jersey City elections. Mine was not one of them. But other Jersey City elections clearly affected the outcome of those elections.
Okay. And that's, you're going up against the voters.
That's exactly right.
You know.
The guidelines say you're supposed to contain your sting and your informant so there's not an adverse impact upon other individuals. And clearly disenfranchising voters, okay, corrupting election results, okay, is a very grievous adverse impact.
I want to talk to you about Dweck's use of agents, and I'm going to start with a practical example of a point that you've raised. In the case of Harvey Smith, when you're at the trial, you see that he's on camera a whole lot. Dweck wore some kind of camera that was on his person, and his objective was to get out there with envelopes of cash and hand it to somebody who would take it. And Smith never did. Okay, but Dweck had a couple people operating on his behalf. Richard Green, I think it's Richard Green,
Right.
who, by the way, they dropped all the charges against
Right.
him, and I got a question about that too. And Cheatham, okay, and they were being paid by Dweck for getting politicians to
Yeah.
take bribes.
That's what I call the bounty scheme.
Right. So they had an incentive to tell Dweck, oh yeah, he took the bribe, I gave it to him, he was happy.
Yeah,
Okay? None of that's on camera, but you have the word of these two
that's right.
crooks.
That's right.
Okay? So tell us about that.
What happened is, and it's interesting, again, go to the Jersey Sting and you find out that Ralph Mara is being put under pressure.
Who is Ralph Mara?
Ralph Mara is now the acting U.S. attorney.
Appointed by who?
Appointed by Christie to succeed him while, before the next actual U.S. attorney is appointed. And a succession of Christie people got appointed. Michelle Brown goes to first assistant U.S. attorney. Charles McKenna winds up moving from executive position in the office over to the criminal division, which is overseeing special investigations unit, which is overseeing.
Whatever happened to those people? They still in the U.S. Attorney's
No,
office?
they're all working for Christie in Trenton, as a matter of fact. Some of them even made contributions to him.